Hello, everyone. Now, this is take two on this particular journey into the inner workings of my little brain and my pens. So, the pens that Ted and I most recently spoke about on the TED Talk are in front of me, and I decided I would put my money where my mouth is and see, in fact, how or if the pens I used would direct me in my drawing in a more profound way than using red ink will make a red drawing and using blue ink will make a blue drawing. Will the type of pen itself or the type of nib it has, when I say type of pen, I don't mean whether it's a Waterman or a Wall or a Parker, but the shape of the pen and the balance of the pen will make my drawing any different from what it would look like if I'd used a different pen. And I'm not trying to mislead you by suggesting, yes, a pen with a fine nib is going to make a lot of fine lines. I'll show you. So the first drawing I did was with this pen. This is the one that Ted liked the most and the one that I really enjoy drawing with. I don't really write with it, but I draw with it. It has a relatively flexible, sort of medium broadish nib to start with, in my opinion, and it's just very rubbery. And I'm able to draw more aggressively with it than I might have done if this pen were slightly finer or more, quote, fragile than the next. So I'm able to just dig in and make this bronze fountain in the Boston Common look maybe a little more angular, maybe a little more aggressive than had it been drawn with something else, like this, for example. This was the last drawing I did. They're not in any order. This was a Waterman Accountant nib. Now, this does not say accountant on it, but it should. It's very fine, only slightly flexible, and because I was thinking of an accountant, I drew it as if an accountant might draw it. An accountant might look at this fountain and say, okay, it has two dragons on either side of a dollop, two more dragons on either side of a dollop. I was sort of building this thing out of its numbered parts, and I was not really emphasizing the boobs on the woman. I was just counting them. There's one here and one over there. And this was sort of just about the facts, even though, well, you can see the difference between these two. If I was writing words rather than drawing a picture, this one might make my sentence be full of emotion and an exclamation point and a couple of maybe choice words that shouldn't be said in public in front of a child. This one will be very evenly, the sentence would be neutral, even, delivered in one voice, nothing really, no emphasis anywhere, perhaps. I know I'm slandering all of you accountants out there. Okay, this was a Sterling Wall. This is the most recent pen in my purchases of pens. This nib was railroading a lot when I got it. And in trying to fix it, I may have fixed it. I haven't really tested it enough. But in this case, I drew all of this in one line, probably because I was afraid it was going to railroad by lifting it up and putting it down in a different place and pressing down more or whatever. Maybe it was guiding me to draw this way because I knew of that particular problem it had, or it had. I may have repaired it. So anyway, I didn't lift the pen off the paper. I just drew it straight down and then went back up and drew the lines here and added those little zigzags there, but never, ever, ever. It started up here. Oh, I lied. I put a little dollop up there. It started here, went down, ended here, and then I added that little dot above the I in a schoolgirl way by making it a circle, not a dot. So this pen it forced me to draw this way. I would not have drawn this drawing with that. So now I've got 3 completely different drawings, or in my mind, they're completely different, based on not necessarily only the width of the nib or the flexibility of the nib, but more of the essential element of the nib. This one is one of my favorites. This is a sterling wall that was returned to me because the nib was cracked. And it's cracked in the back. I can see it here where it's cracked. You can't see it, which is fine. It doesn't make any difference. So I'm maybe a little tiny bit more careful with it. But so I drew this. I don't know, there was something that made me want to make lots of little tiny marks rather than pushing it around like that in one line. Because of its frailty, I made shorter marks. But let's pretend it wasn't cracked and I wasn't worried about that. I might have drawn a very different drawing than this one, but this is the one I think I like almost the most because I drew it almost as if I was painting a picture with a big broad brush, and I was making clumps of value and by cross-hatching. And I kind of like how this one turned out for that reason. I also tried to show the water path and how the water interrupted the sculpture behind. On none of these, actually the first one, I did show that I drew a little bit of the background. Here, this is part of a tree and maybe part of a church, another part of a tree, and a shadow of a tree. But I did eventually do some more drawing of the external, which you'll see. One of the things that I was dealing with was the boredom factor. Because I was drawing the same thing over and over and over again, normally I don't do that. Normally I will move my fat ass over here and draw it from a different angle, or I'll move my eyeball closer to it and draw just a part. But because of this exercise, I wanted to draw the whole thing and have them be more or less the same, so you could see, or I could see, more importantly than you, it's all about me, how different the pen was making me draw. Waterman Stately. Again, I'm not showing the backgrounds on. I did that later. Oh, I didn't talk about this one. This one surprised me. This is the pen that as I was riding my bike to the location, I was thinking that this is the pen that I would do to try to draw the atmosphere of the place. Because the pen itself is so light and the nib is so fine and there's a delicacy to it that I thought this is the pen that I would use to draw the background. Initially didn't think I would, but that was the one, and I didn't because I had drawn it already and I didn't find it was very interesting. So I did, in my mind, decide there were certain decisions I had in my head before I used the pen and before the pen started pulling my hand around. It's like a Ouija board, you know. You put your hand on the planchette and it sort of pulls you over to the yes and the no and spelling out the love of your life and, you know, it's going to M, A, R, and you're thinking, oh my God, it's Mary. Mary loves me. And then it moves over here to the K, Mark. Suddenly you realize your eyes meet and you're supposed to hear the gushy music of Tristan and Isolde in the background right now, but I'll let you go to that particular gutter. Waterman Stately was this one. Where did it go? This one. This had a nice rubbery nib similar to that wall that I started out with. Again, drawing it's kind of aggressively getting, this wasn't so much concerned with detail, it was just areas of dark and light. And unlike the accountant nib where I was counting how many dragons were there and making sure they all were even because it's a symmetrical object, I just pushed the nib around and it turned into this. And I did all of these drawings combined plus 2 on my iPad in about an hour. So I did not belabor these 5-10 minutes long, something like this. This was a surprise. Well, this is very different from the other drawings. How is it different, you ask? Well, can't you see how different it is? This pen, let's get it in focus. There we go. This is a lot of doodling, and it's calligraphic doodling, and it was done with a Parker 51, which, as you know, is a perfect pen, but I would hardly ever describe it as calligraphic. So why was it making, oh, I know what I remember. Because I love 51s. I don't like to necessarily draw with them. Sometimes I sketch with them. I think with them. I plan something out with them. But often my mind will wander and I'll end up just doodling. Now, for me, doodling is not, it's making marks with lines and dots and cross-hatching and hatching, and I might flip the nib over to have the slightly thicker line do the same thing. And what I'm doing, I'm just enjoying making marks. Not words, not people, not little dragons, not little pooty, not little boobs, but just marks. So this, looking at this gob of doodlement, you could, easily turn this 4-story tall fountain in Boston Common into just a bunch of doodles, little lines and curlicues and dots and stuff, and that's what this pen made me do. And here's a person taking a selfie and buildings in the background and trees. This is a tree, by the way. So this was a surprise, in a way. This is the odd man out of all of these. It's also the pen that Ted did not talk about. Wall yellow nib, one line. Okay, this one has a Waterman yellow nib that was put in it by the seller on eBay, and he said it had a yellow nib. And it did have a yellow nib, a Waterman keyhole yellow nib, which is rounded. Now, I knew, in fact, beforehand that it was rounded. It's meant for lefties to write with a hook. And so I made this drawing all in one line. I did not lift up the pen at all. I started at the top, moved down, did this, backed up and down and up and down and up and down and down here and down here and down here, and then went up and added the water like this. And then finished. I don't know where it ended. Didn't end down here. It must have ended at the top again. And because of the nib, because it's rounded and able to write upside down going the wrong way most of the time by lefties, this lefty, meaning communist, socialist, anarchist, Antifa, was... Someone called me a commie the other day, and that's not true. I might be left of center, but because this was made for a lefty, I was able to push it as much as pull it. And so drawing a fountain in one line sort of requires pushing. Yes, I could start at the top and work all. It's like drawing with an Etch-a-Sketch. You can't lift it up. They can't make a space. So I could have started the whole thing this way, but I have to go back up. If I'm making a water go this way, well, now what I'm going to do? I have to go back up. So there's a lot of upping in a drawing like this. And when I draw with one line rather than a bunch of little lines. By the way, this cap doesn't screw on, but I did buy another pen just exactly like this, the pattern, the company, and on eBay, and maybe I can do a cap switcheroo and they'll both work. Maybe not. We'll find out. Okay, Waterman Bulldog. Okay, this was a surprise. I was not expecting to draw the church and the building and the skyscraper and the people with this pen. This one is the one that I described with Ted as being this little ugly, aggressive, bulldoggy kind of a pen. The weight is forward. I want to just, I'm tugging at the leash, trying to bite the ankles of that old lady over there that isn't giving me her sandwich. And I'm just doing everything I can to pull it back, but it wants to just jump and bark. So this was in my mind, a very aggressive drawing. Lightning bolt trees, exploding trees, and I drew the statues here and the dragons and the water very, very quick and aggressive, like that dog would, as it would pounce. So that was not a surprise. I guess it was a surprise that I drew all of this stuff. I was not thinking that. So this pen made me do that. It was not a conscious idea. Waterman Taper Right Gold Fill Cap Star. Okay, this one is here. And I think it needs a new sack because every once in a while it blobbed, big blobs of ink. And that was not intended to happen. This is an accident, as are these things. That's that's an accident too, but this isn't on purpose. That's an accident. There is a big difference between the dark here and the very light back there, and why that difference is, I don't know. I mean, it's something I would do normally, but why I did it with this pen and I didn't do it with this pen, I don't know. Oh, this is the barking dog. Of course, it can't There's no quiet button. The volume is set at 11 on that animal and that pen. So the gist is the pens do make my hand and my brain and my heart, if I had one, think differently about the thing that's in front of me as I'm drawing it. If I were a writer, it may also, using this pen over this pen, here I'm writing a article for the Encyclopedia Britannica about bauxite mining. You know, it's factoid after factoid after foot after cubic inch after depth in feet and meters, and lots of numbers in the sentence that I would write with this. With this pen, I don't think there'd be a number anywhere near it. It would be about feeling. Tell me your feelings, Pierre. This is what I would write my diary with. This would be the gas mileage log. No, sorry, picked the wrong pen. This would be my gas mileage log. And this would be the note to the neighbor who leaves his dirty underwear on the line. He's very stingy, that neighbor. He uses like a thimble full of detergent, and he doesn't own a dryer because the air can dry. So he's very thrifty, and he will put that thimble full of detergent in the washer and load it up with all of his tidy-whities, which are neither tidy, T-I-D-Y, or T-I-G-H-T-Y, and they're not white either, because he uses only that. So they're all this sort of shade of somewhere between tan and burnt umber, and that would be the note I'd write to him. Can you please wash your clothes when you wash them? So normally when I draw, I'm not as boring as this, because I do sometimes move my ass around to a different location and draw a detail rather than the whole thing. There was a time, however, where I did draw in 2 hours, draw many versions of the same thing without moving my ass too much. And it was a carousel in Boston, and you know the calliope music and the lights and all the garish colors and the animals, the unicorn and the turkey and the lion and all sorts of children, and the smell of detergent and vomit both permeated the scene. So I was drawing on many different kinds of paper. I was drawing with pens and then went back with brush and a different pen with a different color. And these sort of are much more lively. Here I'm drawing on a paint swatch. Benjamin Moore, what color is this? Yellow haze. I'm going to paint my house yellow haze. Yeah, do that. Get right on that. So the ink, just sort of beat it up, and it was really fun, to draw completely. And with this paper, I never know whether it's going to beat up or not, so it's a surprise, and surprises are fun. Surprises really didn't happen. Well, that was a surprise, but surprises don't happen so much when I'm drawing the same thing at the same time using the same paper. I drew some clouds that day. We'll go back to over here. So sometimes I did a close-up. This is on this shimmery paper, so the ink doesn't really ever get dark. There's always a little bit of the shimmer material shining through. What kind of paper is this? This is weird paper that sort of absorbed the ink and deadened it, but that's okay. Shimmery paper again. So doodly, you know, some were more doodly with one line and some were less doodly with many lines. Here, this yellow and the black all mixed to make this pukey color. The yellow here is highlighter, magic marker. This is with a dried out felt pen. So normally this is how I draw. And I can imagine you might saying your drawings, these drawings are better than these, but these are more fun to do. So did I learn a lesson? I don't know. Did I waste 26 minutes and 3 seconds of your life by having you watch this? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you learned something very important from me today. Desubscribe from Pierre Gustafson. Bye.